Good afternoon, Bill Anderson here, coming live from the Costa del Sol. It's lovely to be back. I'm glad that Dave in France has finally paid the electric bill and we're all ready to go again. Delighted to I should say welcome back, Chris Goodacre. Chris, you have been with us before once some time ago. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Can you hear me okay there, Bill?
We can hear you just fine, thanks, Chris. Yeah, Chris, and the great thing about radio is that we can all see each other. You can't see us, and Chris is wearing his Upsticks T-shirt. Upsticks. What's all that about, Chris?
Yeah, always waving the flag. Yes, Upsticks is our company, and we basically help people move to Spain. Do the paperwork. So our side is when people are retiring here, we'll be getting them, if they're British, non lucrative visas, or if they're European, we'll be helping them register their residency here. So yeah, that's a brief overview of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, you're actually a fairly young company in many ways, Chris, aren't you? But over the last 3 or 4 years, your business has just taken off incredibly, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So the brand was formed just before Brexit. Yes, obviously when Brexit happened, that gave us a little bit of a leap, shall we say, because that was a turbulent time and we were helping people to regulate the situation here in Spain. And then since then, we've just gone from strength to strength. We've been focusing on visas like the non lucrative visa. That's our main service product. And we focused on it really quite early, even before Brexit, which meant that we were ready for the post-Brexit avalanche of people still moving.
Yeah, and it's not been a very simple, straight path, Chris, has it? I mean, you said, oh yeah, we focus on the non-lucrative visa, which allows people to come here but not to work. But there's been a lot of changes, both in how people have to apply for it and where they have to apply for it, and also in I guess the amount of money they need to demonstrate that they've got before they can come to Spain.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if obviously now talking about Brits post-Brexit, it just basically Brits are third country nationals, so there is different platforms that they have to try and come in on, and the non-lucrative doesn't allow you to work, so it essentially is a visa which is designed for retirees. That said, many people have sort of made the boot fit with the visa by generating assets, by selling cash assets, by selling houses and stuff. But yeah, definitely. I mean, the process over the last 4 years has just changed dramatically. I mean, it's albeit that the basic structure and requirements the same, the interpretation of the requirements is a bit bonkers at times.
Yeah, now, Chris, I guess you're dealing primarily, maybe not exclusively, but primarily with Brits wanting to come over to Spain. Is it very different from other country nationals if they want? Let's just say you're in the US and you want to come and live here, because a lot of Americans are talking about moving to Spain. Is it a very different process for them?
No, I mean, so it's essentially the same visa. Say they're coming in on the non-lucrative, it would be the same visa. The difference would be the interpretation of the requirements of the consulate where they're coming from.
Right.
So we have more or less now. We had even up to last year a different sort of interpretation between the 3 consulates in the UK. So Edinburgh, Manchester and London would ask for slightly different things. And that obviously varies around the world. So we've also done visas for people coming from France, for example. So there's Brits who live in France and need a visa to come to Spain. And when they're going to the French consulates, they ask for different documentation to what we get asked for from the UK. And that would be the same for Americans, say, for example, who are coming through San Francisco or somewhere like that. They would have the same sort of, it's all applied to the same law, but the requirements are different. So
why is that not surprising, Chris? When we think about, I don't know, doing any kind of paperwork here in Spain, let's just say we have to do something through the national police. Um, you go to Marbella, they ask for one lot of things. You go to Fuengirola, they ask for a different lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this has always happened even on the non third country national platforms. So, for example, when we're doing EU residencies, so we've got obviously a lot of people have found Irish passports as well, which is
Yes.
great. Malaga is actually now one of the at the forefront of being. Now I'm hesitant to say it. It's not the easiest province, but it's one of the provinces which understands more modern documentation when it comes to online bank accounts and stuff like that. They are really Malaga are making headway with the EU residencies. Where if you go to places, other provinces like Alicante and Murcia, they're still asking for stamped and notarized documents from banks and places like Valencia will ask for 6 months worth of bank accounts proving that you've got enough money to fund yourself when you have to register within 90 days. So there's a lot of contradictories in terms of their interpretation of the law as well.
Right. So given that regardless of where people come from, that there may be different requirements at the consulate levels in their home country, what are the sort of broad requirements for people who want to come here? And let's just talk about the non-lucrative visa, because that you've done a phenomenal number of non-lucrative visas since Brexit, haven't you?
Yeah, we're nearly up to 500 now. We'll be celebrating that soon. And it's been, I'd say, about 85% of those have been through the UK. I mean, we've seen there recently, I mean, it is very positive news, though, we have to say, from where we were 4 years ago, waiting for the consulates to open after COVID and you couldn't get an appointment. I was having to jump on planes to go knock on the door to get information from the consulates, to now the appointment booking system is managed by an external company called BLS. And the appointments take 15 minutes and you're in and out and they're readily available. I mean, if you'd have told me that 4 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you. But in terms of the requirements, so the main requirements are, first of all, that you have the financial stability of financial funds to support the visa. And that is for a single applicant, that's €28,800 per year. So the first visa is a 12-month visa, so you need to prove you've got that in passive income, savings, or a combination of both.
Right.
It can't be worked income. It has to be passive, so that could be pension, it could be rental income, for example.
Right.
If for a couple, it's €36,000, and for every family member after that, some people may bring children, dependents. It's €7,200 on top for every member. So.
Right. Okay. That is, I should just say, really for the first year, isn't it?
Yeah, that's for the first year. So you have renewal periods. After the first 12 months, you then renew for a further 24 months. And after that, you renew for a further 24 months. And at that point, on renewal, you need to understand that if you're working on a basis of savings, so passive income is considered recurring. So say, for example, you earn 30 grand a year in pensions. Over the 2 years, that would be considered as 60, will meet the requirements because it's passive recurring income. Savings is different. If you've got a lump in the bank and you want to prove that you've got the money for the renewal, if you're a couple, you're going to need 72,000.
Right. So you get the visa's issued initially for 1 year, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then it's renewed for 2 years.
2 years, and then a further 2 years, and then you can apply for what they call larga duración, which is permanent residency.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And once people have that permanent residency, does that give them the rights of any other sort of permanent resident in Spain?
Yeah.
So they can work, for example. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, most people won't intend to, but we have had some structures of people who have managed to get the money together for the first 5 years, but do intend to work at the end of it.
Right.
I'd find that tough after 5 years.
I think we'd all find it tough if we weren't working for 5 years to start looking for a job, wouldn't we?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think, oof, that'd be tough. You can imagine that shock to the system, couldn't you?
Indeed, indeed. You know, Chris, I'm not crazy about social media, but you know that like most of us, I keep my eye on things, and you must come across this all the time. There is so much misinformation, and I'm not talking about anything other than people moving to Spain. There is so much misinformation out there. And people speak with such authority when even I know they're talking through their whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the problem you have is that, you know, going back to the requirements, when you go to BLS, you have to present like criminal records checks, medical certificates, you have to have your full medical cover or state cover, the S1 works, but everything is it's individual to you, your circumstance, albeit it could apply to someone else. It doesn't apply to everybody. So a lot of people who have maybe had a positive experience in Manchester using premium bonds as their proof that they can support themselves financially, will put that on the internet, and then somebody might go to London and find out that that's not accepted. You know, this is where
Right,
you have
right.
to sort of make an assessment individually of each case. It's just not the same for everybody.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't seem to have quite grasped yet that, you know, certainly for Brits, and I have also seen it from people from the States, that you cannot just simply come to Spain because you want to work, you want to set up a business. It's not that simple anymore, is it?
No, no. As a third country national, it's not. So if you've obviously got EU and you can come in on a EU passport, or an EU family member, even, then albeit that it's slightly more complicated registration for an EU family member, you can do that. But as a third country national, it's certainly not easy just to rock up and set up a business. In fact, you would need to have the visa approved beforehand getting it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you know, it is technically possible for someone to come over and set up a business, but there is a long process to that as well, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if you, as I say, I mean, we don't do the self-employed visas, but we know we have got colleagues who do, who we refer to, the list of stuff that they send us that they have to have. So approved business plans, obviously financial stability to be able to not only support themselves, but any employees. There's certainly a lot of due diligence on the certain kind of industry that they're going to be working in as well, and the time it takes to do it, because it could take up to 18 months to get a visa approved, at which point you've then actually got to set up a business. So you've got to have
Right.
funds to be able to be supporting yourself in the country of origin. And then when you hit the ground running here in Spain, you've got to be able to run a business from day one.
Right, yeah. So it is a much more complex process than let's just say it's called the retirement visa, isn't it? Sometimes the non-lucrative visa. Yeah,
Yeah, certainly it is. I mean, because the non-lucrative visa has become, I said, by far the most popular visa, and there are a few people who are coming on that visa, and then at the end of the first or third year, attempting to switch that maybe to a self-employed platform, which
right,
again is slightly easier to do once you're in the country.
right.
But we've found that most people on the non-lucrative visa are here managing to structure their assets so they don't actually have to work and just get their permanent residency at the end of it.
Yeah, and so you did say there, Chris, that you know there are other options available, but you tend not to focus on those. What other options are there available for people potentially to come here?
So obviously, I say the first thing is if you have got any sort of access to an EU passport as a family member,
Uh,
okay, that is an option, obviously, because as an EU family member, you can come in as a third country national. So we have a lot of Irish and UK combinations. One thing that a lot of people do as well is when they're waiting for the Irish passport, which can take a while to come through if they've got access to one, is they get a non-lucrative visa first, and then you can switch that afterwards, which gives you the option to work. If not, you've got self-employed visas. Obviously, at the moment, the golden visa is all up in the air. after Sanchez's announcement that he was going to abolish the property side of the investment of the golden visa, but the other levels of having €1 million in a cash asset still exists. So if you're lucky enough to have €1 million and want to invest in a business, you can do that.
Right.
Obviously, the digital nomad visa as well, which was introduced last year, that has become extremely popular for people who can remote work and want to live in Spain, though, and you can actually request that visa while you're in Spain on your 90-day Schengen allowance. That's the only other platform which some people are finding is the Arraigo platform, where people who are married to Spanish nationals, they've now changed the format in which they have to apply for residency, and the government has been updating other Arraigo platforms for people who are here in irregular situations.
Right, so there's going to be a lot of people looking to marry a Spaniard to see if they can get in, yeah?
I think we could set up a website.
I think there's a business opportunity here, Chris.
I'll just write this down. Are you single and?
But so they call it the digital nomad, which I think is a bit of a misnomer in some ways, isn't it? People who come to Spain tend not to be nomads; they tend to want to settle down in a place. But even that, it's not just like, I can work online, so I'm going to come to Spain and work. It's a bit more complex than that, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That the digital nomad visa, even when you're here in Spain, and getting it, it's not just a case of, there's all my documents, and by the way, my company says I can work. You have to have official documentation from the company which allows you to work in Spain, also documentation from HMRC, depending on what your platform is. If you're a self-employed person, or if you're employed by a company which allows you to be abroad and working, the documentation is completely different. So it's not just come in and there's my work contract, I'm going to sit on the beach with a laptop. It is complicated. Yeah.
I mean, you were talking about the golden visa. For people who don't know what the golden visa was, I guess technically it still is at the moment until it's passed by Parliament. But can you explain what that was? Because people are still talking about applying. I see this, if not on a daily basis, certainly a weekly basis on social media. I'm going to still apply for my golden visa. Can you tell us just a little bit about what that was and what's happened there, Chris?
Yes, the golden visa is the investor visa, which means they had certain tiers of investment which allows you to apply for residency in Spain. And the first tier was investing €500,000, €500,000 in a property in Spain. That allowed you to apply for a visa, which actually gave you 3 entrants into Spain and back again. There was no limit on the amount of time. 1 day a year you have to be here to maintain that visa.
Right.
And you can apply for it from within Spain. Now, according to the government's last announcement, Sanchez's announcement, they are going to scrap the 500,000 element of investing in a property. You will not be able to get the visa if you've invested $500,000 in a property in Spain. But we don't know yet when that's actually going to happen. And I just saw on the news yesterday that Sanchez is having some time off now as well. That might delay things.
Indeed, yes. I think that there's been a bit of an upset and certain accusations being made against, I think, some dodgy dealings on the part of his wife. And he is talking about, I think, taking some garden leave.
Yes.
Gardening
it's
leave.
Funny, that. Straight. So I mean, who knows how that is going to affect everything. There was also supposed to be some big reforms happening this year across the whole immigration platform.
Right.
And everybody expected that to happen at the end of the year. If it wasn't don't think it would affect the non-lucrative visa as such, but more on the platform I was talking about before, the arraigo and people who are here in a regular situation. And everybody was looking forward to those progressive moves, which essentially they're proposing, is now really worried after yesterday, because obviously that's all going to be shelved until we know if we've got a stable government or not.
Yeah, but I guess for people who have already applied for the golden visa, regardless of when Parliament decide to, scrap it, I would guess, I don't know if you know this, that their applications would still be valid.
Yes, yeah, I don't think they can really retrospectively change the rule in which they gave somebody residency. We will expect that. We don't expect them to be able to take it away. What things which we don't know is if there's an application going through that's been submitted, say before the date that they decide to pull the visa, will that still be considered? Stuff like that. Hence why it's quite a big rush at the moment of applications going in.
Yeah. So if as it was. If you had $500,000 to invest in a property, for example, you could apply for the golden visa. Does that include your whole family?
It can include dependents. So if you're the main investor, it will include dependents. It doesn't mean that you can be an investor and then bring, your auntie, your nieces and nephews and everybody over and have a big party. Right. But if you have a family unit which includes dependents, then yes, it would include your family.
Right. Okay. So that looks, yeah, I mean, the reason I have heard that there is certainly on the costas, I don't know about inland, but there is shall we say, a housing crisis in Spain. And they seem to, well, no, it's not implying, they've actually said that the golden visa is contributing to the pushing up of both house prices and rentals. But actually, the number of golden visas, I read, I don't know if the figure was accurate, but the number of golden visas since the whole scheme was introduced, which was not just a Brexity thing, is really not a vast number of visas that have been issued.
No, definitely. I mean, most people are of the opinion that it was a political move and it's not going to exactly reform the housing market of 500,000 plus. To put it into context now, as you say, there is a housing crisis. There's so many properties, especially on the coast, apartments which are worth 500,000. And I spoke to our bank here, where I go regularly, in Alarin de la Torre, where we are, and in the area of Pinos up there, most houses are worth over 500,000, and I think they said they sold about 25 last year in Alarin, which are worth over 500,000, and none of them had a golden visa. It was just people buying houses.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think the golden visa and the housing crisis, which I have to say is not just a Spanish thing. I follow a little bit the news in the UK, and they're talking about housing crises there as well. And I guess it's something which is happening throughout Europe at the moment. So I think it was a bit of a red herring saying, we'll get rid of the golden visa and that will cure the housing crisis.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's going to cure the housing crisis at all. But I don't know. Yeah, again, it was a political move, and things are happening here in Spain, aren't they? So, it's just a shame for the people it's affected, really.
Yeah, it is. Okay, Chris, we're going to take a short break, and we'll come back and we'll pick up on some of the other things and perhaps some of the problems that you've been having to deal with, because I know you have a very active YouTube channel now, and you're picking up a lot of that, all to do with banks and healthcare and all the sort of complications that go along with people moving out here to Spain. And welcome back. I'm Bill Anderson, coming live from I have to say, a sunny but a little bit fresh. We've got winds coming in from the Atlantic today, so it's a little bit fresh, Costa del Sol, but it is springtime. And Chris Goodacre from Upsticks, great to have you back, Chris. And you're talking us through, I guess, the challenges that you face in helping people to relocate to Spain. You're going to have a busy year next year, aren't you?
Yes, yeah. So obviously, right at the beginning of the, well, I said right at the beginning, should we say, right at the Brexit point, there was an awful lot of people who had to regulate their situation, Brits in Spain, and get their residency within the withdrawal agreement, and that's coming up to 5 years ago.
Right.
So this next year, we're going to have an awful lot of people who have had their 5-year temporary residence period within the withdrawal agreement, so just before Brexit, and they're all going to have to renew their cards for permanent ones.
Right. And do you know what that process is going to be like? Because I guess you haven't done it yet, have you?
No, so the only ones we've done we've done plenty of people who've lost their cards. We've got duplicates. So
Right.
that's happened. In terms of, there's been a few people who switched from the old green residency card to TIE cards who have then subsequently been here for more than the 5 years and gone on to get permanent ones. But
Right.
no, this will be the first time that we've done, shall we say, the withdrawal agreement. People had to apply once they withdrew the green cards through the government for their right to be here, and that period should start around the beginning of July next year. So
Right.
let's see how that goes. Now, I spoke to the police station in Velez, and they were convinced that everybody was going to have to get what they call a resolution first to apply to the subdelegation, whereas when I spoke to Malaga, they said they're just going to turn up and switch their card over. So
Okay.
time
Okay.
will tell.
Right, right. And in that sort of move from temporary to permanent, do they have to still demonstrate any level of income or savings, or do we know about that yet?
We don't know for sure yet, but what we assume is, so if you're on a European platform, i.e. you've got an EU residency card, when you come to get permanent residency, you still have to prove that you've got money to support yourself and healthcare in place.
Right.
So assuming that they do the same for the withdrawal agreement people, then yes, you'll have to prove that you've got your healthcare and funds to support yourself.
Right, right. On the issue of healthcare, I think for let's just say people coming from the United States, for example, the idea of having to have private healthcare is not it's not unusual. But for a lot of Brits who have been used to well, what can we say, a national health service. Have there been any complications for people or things that people don't understand about the type of healthcare cover that needs to be had in order to be able to move here?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the first thing probably to say would be that people who are of state pension age, one of the agreements which is still in place is they can actually get state healthcare through the S1 agreement.
Right.
So that was something right at the beginning of the visa process, which was a bit shaky because there was a few S1s which were rejected, basically said, oh no, you can't use that. Then they agreed on a sort of a farcical process where people have to pre-register their S1 in Spain. They actually register the S1 in Spain, knowing it's going to be rejected, but they have a registration document,
Right.
which serves at the consulate to prove you've done so. And then when you get here, you have to finalise that. So that's good news that state pensioners can get state health care.
And just to explain that the S1 is allows people who are here to have health care through the Spanish national system, and then that is presumably billed to the UK health service.
Yeah, and that's complete. So that's everything. There's no extensions there where if you got, God forbid, if you got cancer or had to have an amputation or something, that would all be included. But on the state system, so some people still like to prop that up with a little bit of private care as well until they get their feet under the table.
Yeah, and if I were living in the US, for example, and wanted to come over, and we know that US citizens pay a lot for private healthcare. Can they just use the insurance policy, the health insurance policy they have in the US to move to Spain?
Normally, no. because the policy. So if you're coming on a private health insurance policy, it has to be a complete policy. So that's with no what we call here co-payments, which is known as excess. So literally, if they want to know that if you collapse in the street, that when the ambulance turns up, they're not going to have their credit card machine out first.
Right.
And also, you can't have any extensions, so you can't have anything that won't be treated. The healthcare has to be complete as per the National Healthcare Service,
Right.
and by a recognised provider. So most of the time, they have to take out new healthcare from one of the companies here in Spain.
Right. So is having your healthcare through a Spanish company, is that a requisite, or does it just make things easier?
It makes things a lot easier. So in terms of a requisite, it has to be a company which is licensed to operate in Spain.
Ah, right. Okay.
Basically. So and you'll find that most companies abroad would either subcontract a company here or something, and then if you've got documentation when it isn't in Spanish, it would require an awful lot of translation to prove why that company is legal to operate in Spain. Hence why 99.9% of people get a new policy from a company which is already here.
Yeah. And is that an expensive exercise, Chris, or does it again depend on the individual and if they have any pre-existing conditions, or is it expensive to get full healthcare down here?
Well, sometimes that depends on the point of view, because as you say, most people from the States go, wow, that's cheap, and most people from the UK go, how much?
Yes.
So, because they're not used to paying it, whereas people from the States used to paying it, and they go, oh, wow, 3,000 a year. So is that all? I'm going, yeah, is that for both of us? Yeah. No, it depends on the individual circumstance. Obviously, people have, and the companies that you use as well.
Yeah.
So, some companies won't insure you with certain illnesses, and others will. And it's very individual to your circumstance.
Right. So, Chris, you've been doing this. I mean, I said right at the beginning that Upsticks is a relatively young company, although I think you have expanded at a rapid rate over the last 4 years. What have you learned from it all, Chris?
Oh, that's a good question. Patience. It's I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is just not to assume that somebody knows. So what I mean by that is that before Brexit, everybody, if you remember, residency was a sell. You had to try and convince somebody to get residency in Spain.
Right.
I'm considering taking residency, even though they were here as an EU citizen, above the amount of days they were supposed to be. It was never controlled. So, to convince somebody to do it was quite difficult. Now, obviously, you have to have that permission to be here in Spain, and you have to assume that everybody you're talking to doesn't understand, to start from scratch, doesn't understand what a padron is, a TIE, an NIE, an ITV, whatever you're saying.
Yes.
My biggest learning curve was because I talk a lot, and I'll just go talking to somebody, they'll be like, it's all great, we have no clue what you're talking about when it's so you have to really, really just defragmentate everything and just not.
Yeah.
It's a different world that we're in now from 4 years ago.
Yeah, so when you say, well, your NIE is listed on your TIE, and take that with you to the ITV, and yeah.
It's hence why we do the YouTube videos. You have to stop yourself at times and go, right, we need to explain this again, and we need to explain this, and then obviously with the constant changes with the timelines and things, you've always got to make sure that you don't get ahead of yourself and start again when speaking to somebody. Yeah.
So, anything else? You've learned patience, Chris, and I'm sure your wife is grateful for that.
Yeah, well, you can ask Lara when you see her.
I will do. What else have you learned about yourself, about setting up the business, about running a business, and about what it is you do? Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is definitely based around timing. So, I mean, before it used to be very punctual interactions with clients. So literally, you would meet a client, see if they qualify for residency, meet them at the police station, and say goodbye. Whereas now we have clients who we've recently finished 3 visas for people who we've been talking to since 2022.
Wow.
So sort of having to manage that process of being in contact with somebody for over 2 years, sometimes, and then teaching them what is the best time for them to apply. I mean, timing is absolutely key for everything, regarding when you're going to get your accommodation here, your tax situation. So this is something that we've learned to try and structure over the last 4 years, which we never had to do before.
Yeah, and having spoken locally to various people who are involved in the whole finance and tax world, I understand that the timing can make the difference between whether you end up with a big tax bill either back home or over here or not. So there are a lot of things around that, aren't there?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're talking about our client journey in some circumstances. Now, we're actually coming up to our first round of second renewals for NLVs.
Right.
So people who are going for and we probably been with these clients now for 4 years. Now, we're not constantly every day talking to them, but they're with us, with the updates and everything. And right at the front end, that's allowed us now all this experience to see where people could quite potentially have liabilities like capital gains.
Right.
It's not only capital gains. Everybody focuses on if you're going to sell a property the same year you move over, could you get walloped for tax over here? But there's also income tax considerations. So, yeah, as I say, we work with tax advisors as well, and quite often we'll have to sit down with them with a case and go, look, I'm ready to go because I'm the visa guy. I don't care. Boom, we need to go. We've got the application forms ready. And I'm going, but I'm not too sure that fiscally they're ready. And then we have to give people the bad news that maybe we have to put their application back a couple of months, but it could potentially save them tens of thousands.
Right. And do something you were doing, I understand. Are you still doing the registration of vehicles? People who want to bring their cars over here, is that still something people are doing?
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, last year we set up we've got a new website now, which is called Upsticks Drive. And my wife Lara now runs that side of things. So I've stepped away because we're just very busy with the visas. And but we're doing an awful lot of vehicles. Most of it, again, is tied into our clients who are coming with visas as well, because it's quite handy because a lot of the documentation we can time correctly for it to work with the car as well.
Right.
So there's things like customs which are involved, and obviously the ITV, a lot of time in surrounding when you get your residency to when you can actually bring your vehicle, because there's certain paperwork you don't have till you have that visa registered. But yeah, we're doing the cars still, and enjoying that. And we actually bought in our own car, a little promo car as well.
Right. I'm not very sure I'd like to bring a car from the UK down to here, because it's bad enough driving on the left-hand side without driving a right-hand drive car.
Yeah, you do. The most annoying thing is car parks.
Right. Yeah, because you can't reach the ticket machine. So it's you we were stuck behind when the driver was getting out to walk round the car to pick the ticket out the car park machine, yeah?
No, because you can get quite handy with those litter claws. If you see them get from a Chinese shop, if you've got a good steady hand, you don't have to get out your seat.
But can you get it back in at the other end with your litter claw?
Oh, it's funny. We were talking about this yesterday, and we said, thank goodness now for the camera recognition of the number plates.
Right.
You don't have to do that in a lot of places.
I know. Yeah, you get clocked on the way in, and it just reads your number plate on the way out. It does make life a lot easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's one good thing, technology.
Yeah. Why do you think Spain is still such an attractive destination for people, Chris?
I think there's just so much familiarity with it. I mean, we're still speaking to people now, our clients who've been visiting for years, and everybody that we speak to who who's coming over seems to have fallen in love with some part of Spain, you
Right.
know, and it's not necessarily, you know, I'm in love with Andalusia. I love Andalusia. I should work for the tourist board of Andalusia. I really should,
Sure.
because, you know, I feel at home here, and it is my home. But I've had that sort of feeling from people in Murcia, Alicante, up in Valencia, and I think there's just a familiarity of people who've also previously visited Spain, you know, during the years leading up to their retirement, and it's always been their dream. And we hear that an awful lot.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think Spain, like a lot of countries, there's kind of something for everyone, depending on what you want. I mean, you know, whether we're talking about the UK or Spain or France or the States, you know, if you like sea and sand, you've got sea and sand. If you like mountains, you've got mountains. If you like big cities, you've got big cities. If you want tiny villages in the middle of nowhere, you've got them. You know, so there is kind of something to suit every palate, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about this where we're trying to get more articles on our website about what you can actually do. You know, like you can have some paella on the beach in Montreal, and within an hour and 15 minutes be skiing if you want to, you know, winter.
Right.
And it's just, Spain has such access, and relatively cheap, shall we say, compared to other countries, you
Yeah.
know, for certain things. It's not as cheap as it used to be, and people get shocked now when a beer is more than €2. But it still is, you know, an amazing place to really get everything you want.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I think it all depends on where your source of income is, Chris, isn't it? If you are, you know, if you have a source of income from a more expensive country,
Yeah.
then translating that into life in Spain, you're probably going to find everything: rentals cheap, buying a house cheap, health insurance cheap, buying your food or eating out or whatever. It becomes more difficult when people are working here, I think, and you know, salaries are not big salaries down here.
Yeah.
So I think for those of us that have been here, I've been here 20 years, you know, it feels like everything is getting more and more and more expensive. But if somebody is coming from, I don't know, from the States, for example, or moving from Germany to down here, where salaries are much higher, they're going to find it still pretty reasonable, aren't they?
Yeah, and this is again conversations that we have with clients about getting themselves in the mentality of the local economy. So because when people come, they're like, "Oh, that's cheap, that's cheap, that's cheap," and they're looking at properties and that's cheap, and everything's cheap because they're referring back to what they know. And
Yes.
I have this conversation a lot of times with people. I said, when you start living here, and maybe it's not a better idea to buy straight away, rent, and get your thoughts surrounding how much things cost in the supermarket in the bar here, rather than how much it costs back home, and thinking everything else is cheap here.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you had many people who have got their NLVs and have decided to go back to the UK?
Very few. We've actually had a few people who've got it for a year, done a bit of a discovery year, gone back, and then planning to come back in another couple of years,
Right.
believe it or not. But very, very few people. I think out of the 500, probably 4, 5,
Right.
if that. Look, unfortunately, we've had obviously clients our demographic pass away, which we've lost, which
Sure.
is quite sad. But no, everybody else has found a way and happy living here.
Right. Chris, you have become increasingly very active from I think it's a social media perspective, but it's your whole internet presence, isn't it? If people are interested in contacting you, tell us a little bit about the best ways to do that.
But you can jump on our website. So you can jump on www.upsticks.es and you can book a call. And if not, there's a contact form on the website where you can drop us a note and we'll contact you and take it from there. If we need a call, we'll book one in, or if not, we might be able to work out an email. But yeah, if you jump on the website, all our contact details are there.
Yeah, and you know, I'm saying this so that you don't have to. I think if people are interested in moving to Spain, it makes complete and utter sense to do it through an agency such as your own, who understands what the requirements are, get all the ducks in a row before the applications go in, rather than trying to do it on their own, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're definitely of the opinion of you've seen my social media, and we literally put so much information out there,
Yeah.
and then we let people choose us to help them.
Yeah.
There's people that we tell people what they need to do. We don't try and sell information. We'll say this is the opinion, but having someone there to help you and who has, shall we say, a lot of the NLVs going through at any one time. So the current circumstance is always relevant, and what's happening in that moment is always good. You know,
Yeah.
it's as I say, each individual circumstance is different. So you can't fully trust one bit of information you see on social media, even if it's correct for the person who said it.
Yeah. So Upsticks, as it sounds, UPSTICKS, Upsticks.es is your website, but you've also set up, and I see you've been very active on YouTube recently as well, explaining a lot of things and giving people updates on what's happening. And your YouTube channel, is it just Upsticks or Upsticks to Spain?
That's right, yeah, Upsticks Spain. Go to YouTube and it's Upsticks to Spain, and you'll see that we've got. I do a weekly update on there, which is proving really, really popular. So you can always drop me a note on there as well if you want our contact details, and subscribe.
Yeah, and you know, if anyone out there is thinking about it, I mean, the information, and I'm not saying this because you're a friend of mine, Chris, but the information that you give is bang up to date. There is no misinformation going out there. It's based on your experience and probably some of the pains you've gone through to get here.
And clients' information. More and more clients are giving us feedback and going, say that on the channel. And we openly and actively ask our clients every time they've gone to an appointment, tell us, give us a great, defragmentate everything and tell us what happened so we can get it out there to the world. And people are really enjoying that part of the process as well. So we're expanding on that.
Chris, our time is almost gone. Can I thank you once again for joining us today? I think you've given lots of things for people to think about. So upsticks.es is your website. Chris, thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
You too.
And it's great to be back on air again. So everyone who's listening from around the world, our 99,000 listeners, have a great weekend, everyone. And I'll be back next week. Take care.